Hello and welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Bongi Wazwane, standing in for Clement Manyatela. Coming up on the show this evening, DA leader John Steenhuisen appears to be implying that there's more to the lights remaining on for at least 28 days than meets the eye in his opinion piece in the Sunday Times at the weekend. The EFF has also suggested that load shedding is man-made and that South Africans should ready themselves for many dark days ahead. Dr. Mteto Nyati, Eskom's board chair, is facing the nation tonight. And also, the Gauteng Department of Education has initiated an investigation into the deaths of two adolescent boys who drowned in the Henops River while on a school excursion. So far, we know that the trip was not approved by the department and that it was also organized by an NGO called Rising Stars Generation. We'll speak to Gauteng Education MC Madume Chilwane, who visited the Davidton Skills School last week. But first, my comment. There are conflicting opinions about the lights being kept on for at least 28 days now. Some argue that this is much needed respite considering the economic burden, while others believe there's more to it than South Africans are being told. As expected, it has been a major issue ahead of the elections, with various political parties having their say. Consider DA leader John Steenhuisen's editorial piece in the Sunday Times, which suggested, and I quote, "In an election year, this creates the perception that Eskom may be manipulating the power supply ecosystem to keep the lights on at all cost until May 29th. He's not alone, though. Here's what EFF leader Julius Malema had to say.
They suspended load shedding because of the elections. Because load shedding is man-made. To show that load shedding is man-made, during our Rugby World Cup, we love rugby, there was no load shedding.
While on the campaign trail, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa told reporters that the lack of rolling blackouts is not a political gimmick, which Election Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa agreed with.
Now we're very close to an election. All that we're doing is to execute against the plan that we had set there for ourselves, and suddenly people accuse Eskom of many things. So the one thing I can assure the South African public is that Dr. Mteto and the Eskom board will not do things that are politically experienced, short-sighted, that are going to damage the South African grid and have long-term implications on our ability to resolve load shedding.
And then IFP leader Velonkosini Hlabisa had his say.
IFP-led government will not say what was said by a member of the ruling party during the debate of the SONA, where the member of the ruling party said load shedding is not the end of the world.
Now, with all this being said, South Africans have one question. When will we see the end of load shedding? Your guess is as good as mine. In his briefing, of course, the minister saying that while a lot of work is currently underway to end rolling blackouts, we're still not out of the woods just yet. So when exactly are we going to have certainty, if at all? Now, according to the minister, elections have nothing to do with the hiatus on load shedding. So what are your views? Keen to hear from you. Please send us your WhatsApp voice notes on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you are sending the voice note from. And please do keep them to 30 seconds or send us an X on at face_the_nation SABC. All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, Dr. Mteto Nyati faces the nation. Thanks for staying with us. Electricity Minister Dr. Hossein Ramokgopa has dismissed as baseless reports that rolling blackouts are being used as an election ploy. He's urged members of the public to instead focus on Eskom's efforts to further reduce rolling blackouts. For more than 3 weeks now, consumers have been enjoying one of the longest periods of free rolling blackouts in years. This as Eskom says it has sufficient generation capacity and emergency reserves to meet demand. Eskom Chairperson Dr. Mteto Nyati joins us in studio to talk about all things rolling blackouts. Dr. Nyati, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's just start with, we haven't had rolling blackouts. A lot of South Africans are reacting to this one. Some are saying it's a good respite for them, especially some of, who are running businesses. But others are saying that there seems to be a lot more when it comes to this issue. But also others are saying it has more to do with politics than Eskom's ability. How do you respond?
When I listen to what South Africans are saying, I guess I understand them because as Eskom, we have let them down a number of times in the past. So when they see things now improving, they probably are skeptical, and it's understandable so. But what we know, because I'm sitting on the board of Eskom, I'm engaged with Eskom. We review the numbers of Eskom, we review operations on a daily basis. What I can say is that what is happening now is a reflection of all of the work that has been done within Eskom over the last, I would say, 18 months or so.
What kind of work is that?
I think it was about around March last year when management, together with the board, they presented what is called a generation recovery plan. And that plan, at the center of it really, it was about focusing on maintenance, driving the discipline of maintenance. And we tried, again, not to try to be fancy or anything. It was a very simple plan. We had about 5 power stations that were doing well. Our plan was to make sure that we keep those continuing to do well. There were about 6 power stations that were contributing 80% of the problems of Eskom. Those, we focus on them and say we have to maintain them, fix them, and get them to a position where they are more reliable. And the third thing that we wanted to do is to make sure all of the other power stations, do we have the right leaders in those operations who are going to be driving the right disciplines within those operations? Those 3 things, they have helped us to be where we are now. The Generation Recovery Plan, it is a 2-year plan. It was approved by the board in April last year for 2 years, which means that we are a year into that plan. And already we're starting to see the benefits, but we are not done yet. We still have to continue to do what we set out to do, Bongi. And
I'm keen to hear on these plans of what still needs to be done, especially around how sustainable what we're doing is right now. But I was in conversation earlier on tonight with Vali Padiachi, who had his own thoughts on what we are seeing, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on what he has to say.
Yeah.
There's obviously some progress from the generation side of the business, but very importantly, the demand is right down at the moment. And of course, to maintain the supply and demand in that context, I'm of the opinion that Eskom is burning a lot of diesel and pushing the open cycle gas turbines to the hilt, especially at peaking times. But admittedly, there is some progress, but I'm still of the opinion that the grid is unstable, erratic, and the real acid test is going to be in winter when the demand moves from 28 gigs to 33 gigawatts as expected. And there I don't think we'll have the current status quo, and we'll definitely get to load shedding when we get into winter. Well, it's a good thing because it's keeping the load shedding down. In fact, we don't have load shedding now, amongst other factors. But the negative of that, as an experienced engineer, is that, God forbid, that the OCGTs do not pack up now, and then we are back to significant levels of load shedding, because they are just pieces of machinery that are operating, albeit they're operating at about, I guess, about 7% load factor. But they've been driven hard for a couple of years, Bongiwe.
Yeah.
And we must just hope that the OCGTs don't pack up now.
How do you respond?
Yeah, look, I always respect the opinions of experts, and he is one of the experts out there. And I would really underline, it's an opinion, it's just a view. For us, we are really in the business. We are investigating these things, we are looking at this. We are not just assuming things, we are looking at the real facts on the ground. And the real facts on the ground is that there's a couple of things that have happened over the last year. The intervention that we have had over the last year has significantly reduced what is called unplanned outages. And these are breakdowns that, of course, are unplanned. And they happen because the machines have not been properly maintained. And once you take things out to maintain them properly and you bring them back and they are becoming more stable, you actually end up having less of those unplanned outages. On average, for example, about a year ago, 19,000 megawatts on average on any given day, that would be the unplanned outages. Today, those unplanned outages are sitting at about 13,000. Significant reduction in terms of unplanned outages. All of that capacity then becomes available to provide or to meet the demand. So that is the key point of why we are here today, and we're looking so much better is because of that. In the last year, on the previous years, one of the things, as he has rightly pointed out, the use of open cycle gas turbines, he has mentioned, it's called OCGTs. The use of them has been used to try and meet the demand. And we're sitting on average last year with a usage of about 18%. You remember he spoke about 7%. The budget for this current financial year, our current financial year, we're sitting with a budget of 9%. We're reducing it from 18% to 9%, half. This current financial year started in April. So that is, we are able to do that because we've been able to increase the availability and reliability of the machines.
It couples with some concerns, though, that, this is also resulting in a lot more burning of diesel, and Eskom hasn't been clear as to say how much diesel it has had to burn since the 31st of March.
Yeah, so that is the point. I heard and I read somewhere that our budget has not been approved for the year. I can never know where that comes from, because actually it is this board, the board of Eskom, that sits down, the budget gets presented to us, and that budget was presented at the end of March, was approved by this board, and then submitted to National Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprise. And that budget has got in it, the usage of diesel comes down by 50%, from 18% to 9%. That is the budget that we are driving this financial year on.
And when it comes into, a lot of work that you've just explained to us right now has been taking place behind the scenes, one then says there's a lot of people behind this work. There's a lot of people behind the strategies that are also being implemented and all of that, which then one can argue and say it lends credence to the fact that it is man-made, because maybe you may have wrong people in wrong positions who are simply not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You are right in the sense that if things are not working, if you were to drill down, it's really not machines. We cannot blame machines on things. It's people who are not doing certain things, as a result, machines break. So when I said that our approach when we were executing this plan was to first look at leadership. We started at the top do we have the right leader leading our generation? That's where all of this is happening. We said, okay, let us appoint somebody who understands generation, who has grown up in that environment, somebody who's going to be able to pick up when people from further down the line are giving him information. He can pick up, this is good information and this is bad information, and be able to push back and hold them accountable. And that person, in turn, what he did, he looked at all of the power station managers, asked himself, do we have the right power station manager in each? Do the people that occupy this position, should they be there? Yes or no? In 45% of the time, he found that they should not be there, and they removed and changed and put the right people there. So we had a situation where we were having leaders that were not leading and managers that were not managing. What do I mean by that? At the end of the day, when you're looking at this whole thing, it's about discipline. Are we measuring things when we're supposed to measure? Are we taking readings when we're supposed to take readings? Are we removing equipment for inspection when we have to do that? All of that is discipline. And if we've got leaders that are not instilling and maintaining that discipline, you'll end up having chaos in those operations. So in a way, you are absolutely right. But at the end of the day, it's about leadership, and leadership driving the right culture within those operations.
And when we come back from the break, I want us to pick up on that and to see then, in your view, how things have improved at power station level, given what we've also heard from the SIU and in Parliament as well. But also look at the trilemma index, which shows that we've regressed somewhat. So what becomes the areas of concern for Eskom, and also what becomes the picture when we go into winter? But we're coming back in just a moment as we continue then our conversation around Eskom and the generation. You're still with Face the Nation. We're in conversation with Eskom Chairperson Dr. Mteto Nyati. Before we continue with our conversation, let's take a listen to some of your voice notes.
We should love to see a big economies like USA, China, Russia, Germany, in France and Britain to take out millions of dollars to give them to the most affected countries, and mainly come with the work available stresses to produce energy from the sun, water and wind, not from coal.
Good evening. For me, this is electioneering campaign by the ANC by suspending load shedding. Remember that stage 16 load shedding was approved, which means load shedding will come back after elections. For now, it is just electioneering campaign that they suspended load shedding. It's somebody from Lichtenburg.
Hello, it's Ziggy Randberg asking how Eskom can possibly afford the increase in debts incurred as a result of diesel fuel having to be used to pay for the past 3 weeks of no rolling blackouts to subsidize the ANC election.
Every time there are major events in our country, all of a sudden load shedding goes away. Now we are going into an election, it's election period. Load shedding has went away during the Rugby World Cup, other sporting events, political events, social events, load shedding tends to go away. So there's a positive correlation between load shedding and certain events, especially this event.
All right, Dr. Nyati, you've heard the viewers. What do you say?
Yeah, look, people, when they look at things, they're trying to connect the dots, and unfortunately, they're not connecting to the reality that we see in Eskom. For example, I mean, just look at the State of the Nation address. You know, here we're having a president there. It's a very important event for the country. And the president, what did he say there during that? He said load shedding is like something that's going to be behind us or something along those lines. The next thing, the same day, we had stage 6 load shedding, you know. So how do you interpret that, you know? So this thing is not man-made. This thing is linked to, if tomorrow we can end up having a demand that is significantly higher than what we can supply, we'll have load shedding tomorrow. You know? So this thing has got nothing to do, it's about that supply and demand. That's it.
It's one thing to also talk earlier on about if we have the right people in power stations and putting the right people in those positions. But when we listen to what the SIU had to say about Eskom and what has been happening there and coming out in Parliament, you hear, for example, about the issue of substandard coal also being mixed with coal, and there's a swapping. There's some cameras being switched off in some of the stores as well. And then you also see some of the critical cameras when it comes to the coming in and going out of some of the trucks that are delivering the coals. Cameras are being switched off there, which also shows that there are people that also need to be dealt with. So have those issues been addressed even at power station level?
You see, when we're talking about discipline, we're not talking about leadership. When a power station manager, you're managing everything in that power station. Looking at things like delivery, looking at weigh bridges. Are the weigh bridges happening the way they should be? Do I have the right people monitoring and measuring things that are coming in and out? That is your responsibility. When I said we had people that were managing, that were in management roles, but were not managing, this is what I mean. When I'm saying we've got leaders that were not leading, that's what I mean. You know, these are people who need to enforce all of these things. It's not just about the operations, it's about everything. Are people coming to work on time? Are they working when they're at work? You know, all of these are connected. You know, if you have a parent that is not parenting, you know what is going to happen in that house. There's going to be chaos, you know. So this is why we focus first at making sure that we've got the right leaders that are leading those power stations. It's not going to turn around overnight, and we're starting to see the improvement over time. We still have a long way to go to get to where we need to get to, but already we're starting to see some green shoots.
Talking about green shoots, how are we looking then for winter? Could we see more rolling blackouts because the demand will be high?
The demand is going to be high, but I guess what is it that we did very well, again, in line with our plan, is that we made sure that when just before in summer, we made sure that we go through planned maintenance, taking out significant amount of capacity, preparing that capacity and making sure that when we get to winter, we release that capacity so that it can address the demand of winter. So we were sitting at about planned maintenance, about 9,000 megawatts, significantly higher than how we used to do in the previous years. That gives us now the ability, when we get to winter, we dial that down to about 3,000 megawatts, releasing 5,000 megawatts. You know. So that is the strategy. Again, are we sure that we are going to be able to meet all of the demand? We don't know.
Because I was going to ask about the issue of unplanned maintenance. What's the reality there?
In the issue of planned maintenance, this is what the unplanned maintenance has come down. It has come down, as I was indicating, from about 19,000 to about 13,000.
In winter? What are your projections?
We need to get that unplanned maintenance even further down, because as you bring more equipment that you have done planned maintenance on, you are actually improving the reliability of those equipment. As a result, your unplanned maintenance comes down. Our intention is that this current financial year, we need to get down below 10,000, you know. And we need to continue to be driving down all of that, because that's where the opportunity lies for us to make sure that we've got enough buffer to address any demand that comes up.
South Africa also falling from 64th to 69 on the World Energy Council latest World Energy Trilemma Index. How seriously are you taking this?
Look, this all of these things are important, Bongi, you know. But right now, the most important part for us as the board is to make sure that we deliver on energy security.
Yeah.
That's the most important part. But as we think about that, already now management is thinking about, okay, we are starting to stabilize on the security part. We need to be thinking about how do we drive down the cost of electricity? How do we make sure that electricity is affordable? That's where now we start to move into thinking about renewables. How do we aggressively participate in renewables as Eskom? First, to help with the environment, but secondly, to help reduce the cost of electricity to the consumers of South Africa.
And I'm sure a number of consumers watching are saying that how fast then do you move in that regard, especially given the fact that you see, you know, when NERSA then gives you, you know, that room to then be able to move when it comes to the tariffs, and people are saying this against the backdrop of the rising cost of living, interest rates are basically affecting people, rolling blackouts impacting, you know, businesses as well. So how quickly do you then move to ensure that affordability is another issue that's being addressed?
See, the separation of Eskom into 3 entities is part and parcel of actually driving down the cost of electricity. And on the 1st of July, the new transmission company of South Africa, that is going to be operational. And that now, we are entering a phase where Eskom is not going to be the only player in town, you know, and we are entering a phase of competition. And you know what happens in competition. You know, it tends to drive down the costs. And also it tends to force the incumbent to up their game. We need to up our game as Eskom in order for us to continue to be the supplier to the new transmission company. So the developments that are happening are good for the country, but are also good for Eskom in helping us to improve the way we do things. In the process, at the end, people who are going to benefit the most are the consumers.
I suppose it also needs then to, you know, have another focus of ensuring that the reputation and the damage to that reputation that Eskom has suffered over the years is something that you're also contending with still as the board as well. And I wonder how that dynamic is also impacting the work that you are doing.
You see, when we're talking about that reputation and the damage is huge. Look now, something positive is happening, but people don't believe it. It is linked to this damage we're talking about. It's only when people start to experience, when you get to a particular event, okay, now it's after elections, we still are seeing that things have not changed from the way they are. Okay, people start to believe. That's the only way that we're going to be able to gain the credibility, by consistently doing things and delivering on what we say, and people looking at it and find that actually there is nothing behind it. It's actually the operational performance of Eskom. That is what we are seeing. There is no politics behind it.
Dr. Mteto Nyati, let's of course just look at what some of the viewers are saying on X, because this is also one of the big talking points as well. Gamachelo saying it's an election gimmick. The ANC knew that it will be difficult to persuade voters to vote for the ANC if load shedding continues. A lot of businesses have suffered due to load shedding. We wonder how long this load shedding reprieve will last. That's a Gamachelo there from Garankuwa. The Don saying, very competent minister, if you ask me. Likasa, lochane batubeke to locha likasa, load shedding is man-made. We're going to have stage 16 after elections, as NERSA said. So let's wait and see. South Africans must vote ANC out of power. I suppose then you continue to contend with what you say. It's something positive, but South Africans...
We just have to, we have to do what we're doing in Eskom. We have to continue to deliver, you know, have to be very disciplined. We've got this 2-year plan. Continue to do that. People will see over time that this is not, it's really about the operational performance. That's why we are where we are.
Let's see then what happens, Dr. Nyati, as you continue then the road ahead and see if things do improve, as you're saying that you're sticking to this 2-year plan. Let's see what becomes the result thereof. Thank you so much for coming to Face the Nation. That was Eskom Board Chairperson Dr. Mteto Nyati. On the other side of the break, we take a look at education matters. This, of course, as the latest drowning incident has cast the spotlight on excursions and the trips that are being planned. What needs to be done in order to ensure that these are not death traps for our children? Thanks for staying with us. Now, before we get into this next conversation, we're asking you a question on our social media platforms that is it time for the Education Department to take a closer look at school excursion policies? And this, of course, is coming just after we've seen some devastating incidences and, of course, a lot of concern for parents as well. So do engage with us. We'll take your comments a little later on. You can see the details on your screens right now. It has been a devastating week for the Gauteng Education Department, and during a school excursion, 2 pupils aged 13 and 16 drowned in the Hanops River near Centurion, north of Pretoria. An independent law firm is probing this particular incident. A similar investigation was launched following the death of 12-year-old Latoya Temilton in January of this year. The Laerskool Queenswood pupil died while camping at the Vahabiki campsite in Olifantsfontein. Enoch Mpianzi, you all remember this name, a grade 8 Parktown Boys student, died 4 years ago while attending an orientation camp at the Nyati Bush and Riverbreak Lodge. So how many more children need to die from drowning on their school excursions before officials really reevaluate the safety of some of these camps? Is it time for the Education Department to take a closer look at the policies around school excursions and what some of the schools are doing without the department's knowledge? So let's speak to Gauteng Education MEC Madume Chilwana, who joins me now to unpack this. Before we even get MEC, thank you so much for your time to, what then becomes the policies and all of that. I saw as soon as this happened, the devastation in your eyes was very clear.
Yes, good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. Yes, indeed, it is it was devastating because we can't be repeating the same thing, dealing with the same thing over and over. And yet the policies are there. Everybody knows what needs to be done. And if they're not doing it, it puts us in a very difficult position, which we find ourselves. And you could understand the pain of the parents of losing a child in the manner in which they've lost their child. It's quite difficult.
And one then also thinks about, the psychosocial support that gets also, administered to the pupils as well in the schools and the parents themselves. But how difficult of a time is this? Because, yes, we think about the parents for obvious reasons, it's devastating. But the pupils were there. They witnessed this. And this must be traumatic for them.
It's usually what we do because we know the impact cuts across. If a child loses their life through drowning, those that witnessed it, of course, it's trauma. And also because a school is a community. Yeah. All other learners know and that this child was here and this is what happened. It becomes difficult for also them, So we have a unit that we usually dispatch to come and assist the schools, the psychosocial unit. But moreover, we also give aided support to families in such a situation. So we try to cover all possible spaces to ensure that we get the school right. But it takes time. It's not an issue that it can happen. Once we've dispatched the unit today, tomorrow, kids are fine. We have NGOs that we work with very closely. The faith-based organization, I really appreciate the work they've been doing with the department in this regard. And so it's a work in progress. Yeah.
You say that the policies are there. It's clear for everyone to know what they're dealing with. Yet, again, you're dealing with an issue of a violation of a policy. Is it an issue of a lack of implementation? Is it pure disdain for the policies that are there? Is it people who don't understand or haven't even read the policies? How are we finding ourselves here in your own assessment?
Firstly, obviously, every time this incident takes place, I get a report where the school's orientated on the policy. And this policy is quite old. I mean, this policy is from 2012, the one that we're currently utilizing to guide our excursions within the province. And it's quite clear what role each plays. What is the role of the school governing body? What is the role of the school and the district? What is the role as it goes up, and who approves what tour? For instance, if it's a tour for local within the province, it's the district that approves it. But there needs to be certain measures in place. The timing of it, who goes on it, the number of educators who should be form part of the trip. Currently, the quota speaks about 1 educator to 20 learners. But if we look at the situation of the Davidton, because it's a special school, it's 1 child is equals to 3. So meaning we'd have to have more educators on board. If you're going to have 90 learners, then you'll do the math. So that's what needs to be done. And there are aware schools about this.
Did the school in Davidton not know this?
They should know it because, I mean, it's policy. We oriented them every year. I checked with the district. They said, no, we take schools through about this, and schools are aware. For instance, if you're going to be a principal of a school and a school in governing, I can forgive the school governing body only on the basis of saying that they've just been elected, because we just concluded the process and we have not taken them through orientation entirely. So it's a different aspect. But if it's a school leadership, they should be aware of policies that govern how they should operate in a school. And that's where we're coming from in most of the time. And most of the time, the law firms, as then they conclude the report, they move from an assumption and an understanding that if you are going to be a school principal, or if you're going to be a HOD or deputy principal, whatever role you play within the school, you should understand the policies and legislation that govern how you work within the school environment. And it's not being irrational, it's an expectation of professionalism that we do. And I have to put this, most schools comply. Most schools comply, most schools, they do everything right. It's just that from time to time we do have this type of incident.
You say that most schools comply, but I also saw an interview that you did with my colleague here, Nozindombimia, and you were saying that the district was not aware of this particular excursion, and had nothing happened on that particular trip, then it would have gone unnoticed. Nobody would have known that this has taken place. So how sure are you that a lot of the schools comply? Because some of these, excursions may be planned without the district being aware, and in fact, we then see ourselves in the same position. And in fact, I just want us to listen to what you said so that we can come back from that.
There were no educators, the trip was not sanctioned, nobody knew that the kids are gone, and 90 kids, anything, it could have been worse. A classic case of a criminal not being caught. If nothing had happened, we would not have known that, we had 90 kids who have left, would have known afterwards.
Yeah. So are you sure that other schools are not criminals that you haven't caught yet?
I get your point. Of course, that's what I said, and I have to emphasize that. Obviously, it's a classic case of a criminal is the one that's been caught. But policy says, and that's what the school should do. When you come back from a tour, there needs to be a report. So in that case, obviously, then it will be something that I have to look within administration as to how far. But when I say most comply, I'm speaking this because usually, most of the time, all these tours, even irrespective of for example, Queenswood, Life School Queenswood, they did apply, for instance. So we do that, for instance, in Parktown, they did apply. So that's why I'm saying most do comply. It's just that this one was a case that all of us, it took us by surprise as to why. For example, I mean, the principal is very experienced, the school leadership, let me not even single out an individual in this case. The school management is very experienced and it understands what needs to be done.
Have they done this before?
Sure, definitely they've
Where they've gone on an excursion and not tell the district?
No, I don't have that information, but I know they've gone on excursions before and they should have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how then are you concerned as MEC that maybe in the province there are some criminals you haven't caught who are doing this, and simply because there are no incidences, don't come back to the district and report, or even ask for permission or notify the district before they go?
What I said is that if that happens, irrespective of reporting no incident, you will be charged because you did not comply. So we're going to be putting our foot down from that aspect. That if any school does that, already has done that, somebody will be held liable for that particular action. So that's the measures we're putting in place. But also the law firms always assist us with a set of recommendations, because part of their terms of reference is to come and tell us what else can we do. Because remember, we passed the Gazette in 2012. 12 years later, are there areas we can improve based on the incidences that have been taking place? And they've been giving us those recommendations. We're looking into it, and we're looking into improving the policy document itself.
And there's a bit of, some mixed views. Others are saying it's a good thing that you are implementing, these legal processes and bringing the law firms in order to be able to deal with it at a holistic level. But there are others who are saying that they are low-hanging fruit. For example, in this particular incident, there were no teachers. They did not ask for permission from the department. That is a low-hanging fruit, and some people should have been fired. Others are saying some people should have been suspended and not wait for a law firm to tell you what to do.
Labor law, labor relations department is dealing with it on our side. So obviously, everyone's got rights, and we have to comply with those rights. We can't just wake up and say you are out. It doesn't work like that. So we have to take them through a process, legal process, and then from there, then the outcomes will come out from there. But yes, in this regard, obviously, you can see that there are gaps within, and those gaps, obviously, it's a weakness that we are seeing. But I don't want to predetermine an outcome, because, we tend to lose cases based on what we say, or what I say.
I suppose that you are not predetermining. You've got the facts at your disposal. The facts are telling you the teachers were not there. The facts are telling you that they didn't report to the department. So how then do you not act against that? Why are you waiting for the law firm? Because that is obvious. That's a violation. The policy is clear.
No, we're not waiting for the law firm on those aspects. Yes. The law firm is to tell us is to give us a comprehensive report of what had happened, what was the process. Because, for example, when the family is notified on time, the parents on time, what were the measures that were taken to inform parents? Were the parents informed that they will be swimming at there, and were they told, what precautions they should take for their learners? Was there a tour manager? Because we have in policy a tour manager who was a tour manager approved by the school government. So the law firm gives us an answer to all of that, and also gives us, tells us what happened on the day as well, and beyond, and post, who was trying to save the learner, were the paramedics. So it's comprehensive. So that's what they tell us. We don't wait for them when there are area gaps that we see that within, because the investigation. So
what have you done about the gaps already then?
No, there's a process in place that which has been undertaken in the department. We have served charges. Currently, we have served the charges to a certain number of individuals. I won't say who now. So it's a legal process. So we're dealing with that. But have already begun to act on those from the gaps based on our own internal, because we don't rely on the law firm. We also do our own internal investigation as a department.
And how long then are these both processes going to take, in your view?
Law firms, I give them strict timelines, not more than 2 weeks after being introduced to the families.
Okay.
Yes.
And then for your own departmental processes?
Ours is generally quite quicker. Yes.
Okay. So when we come back then from the break, I just want us to talk more about, the policies. In your view as MEC, of course, you're sitting there now, you're looking at these incidents and the families looking to you for justice. How then do you begin to ensure that you are tightening the screws as well, especially as far as, the district, but also the department is concerned? And what are some of the, the changes that you'd like to see in order to clamp down on this as well? And what then becomes the problem in some of the schools that you think need to be fixed. And we will also take some of your views on this particular subject as well, because it's quite a concerning one. You think about parents who voice their concerns, and we've seen these incidences happen. So what needs to be done then in order for us to clamp down on them? We'll talk about all of that after the break. All right, thanks for staying with us. We're still in conversation with Gauteng Education MEC Madume Chilwane, unpacking the school excursion policies and what needs to be done in order for us to avoid some of the incidences that we've seen. So let's take a look at what you were saying there on X around this particular conversation. Mzuvugile is saying, why continue with the school excursion, but some pupils are continuously losing their lives? And I suppose, MEC, it speaks to how then do the schools begin to do things differently? Because as a parent, I'm sure he's asking, why then continue if we're seeing these incidents?
You know, a development of a child we don't confine it to just the schooling environment. You know, these excursions have a particular purpose, be it for broadening and understanding a particular subjects. It can be psychosocial. It can be for physiological development, for sport. So they've got different aspects of focus. So once you stop the child from experiencing, I mean, I'm sure you travel if you've and you know what happens when you travel. It broadens up your mind in terms of seeing the world differently. So we can't deny our kids that, you know. So that's where the problem is. So we just have to put more precaution, you know, tighten it so that, you know, for instance, as we were saying before the break, what are the areas that I feel should be tightened? For example, if there's going to be, first of all, maybe should the department look into pre-approving the venues, you know, the pre-approved venues, that if we are going on an excursion, these are the venues that we're approving as a department. So, and I'm talking about public schools. These are the venues, and because these are the venues precisely because they've complied, if they've got swimming pools or water in place, they've got a set number of lifeguards and they've got capacity to increase their lifeguards should the number of children increase, the conditions of the camps, the health status, so all of that, the security. So that is one area we can look into and we should look into. But also, for instance, if we were to say there's water, you know, the schools need to take necessary precaution. Although the policy is vague because the wording council says reasonable, we need to look into a more clear word to say must meet this set of standards. If it's water, there must be a lifeguard for every 10 kids, to guard 10 kids, then, etc., etc. So those are the areas, the gaps that we should need to close. But in terms of closing excursions, it's really, we're denying a nation. We're dealing with a nation. We're building a future citizen. And a future citizen can't be confined into just a schooling environment. We need to take them out. We need to let them interact with other schools, let them interact with other learners from different areas.
And, you know, that's a very important point. But then also one asks, how then do you begin to move around even this issue of the NGOs that are organizing these trips? You know, do you vet them? What needs to happen there as well?
That can also, that's also an area that we can look at, we should look into. But we're urging schools that really, I mean, even the NGOs that was used here, there are too many allegations. Obviously, they're meant to be proven. That's why I appointed a law firm. They need to do more to really vet, look into this NGO. They should not just be the first one that comes and proposes that let's take learners, this is a disciplinary camp excursion. Then they approve. The school says, no, it's fine, let's go. They need to look into, I mean, the school has a responsibility to go and vet the venue. They need to go and, because the SGB must approve the tour. But they have a responsibility to ensure that they are certain of where the learners are going and they provide the necessary measures.
Do you think harsher punishment is also important here. Not only just the sanction of someone losing their jobs, but criminal charges as well could also help become a deterrent, maybe?
Well, yeah, I do think so, especially for these NGOs. We need to look into that because some of the NGOs, the practices that they implement in these camps, really they are worrying. So we are looking. I'm waiting for the report, and if so, then we can take it from there.
MEC, I hope we speak then when the report is out, and also get your thoughts then on how do you move forward. As you say, that even the policy, when it comes to issues around reasonable, where someone can misinterpret it or interpret it the way they do, might need to be looked at. And let's see then what becomes the work going forward. But thank you so much for coming to the show. That was Gauteng Education MEC Madume Chelwane. And that's it from Face the Nation today. Thank you so much for keeping us company.